We have 3 different kinds of animation in this series today. First one being more colored and more traditional cartooning. This with the very hand-drawn. And the next one you'll see is yet another form of animation. So we'll show these 3 films, then we'll bring our panels up, and then we'll talk about how animation is used to promote freedom and liberty. So go ahead and vote for victimhood. Just text 5432 or 1 to 22333. Takes you 30 seconds. And we're done. Great. And let's go ahead and start Tangle. One of our Iranian films, but also one of our animated films, and I thought it was good enough to show it twice. So. As filmmakers, we never end until the credits have run. And that one's important because I don't know if you noticed, but at the very end, that music goes to that very plaintive minor tone that doesn't resolve, and then the strings go away from each other. And I think that's a powerful, important point that the music is making, that this story does not get resolved. It does not get resolved just when you come to a country that is free, because all of your ties are still back there in your previous country. I think it's a really powerful piece of animation. Let's go ahead and invite our panel up. We have Jake Klein of, I want to say CRC, Capital Research, and Patrick Reasonover, Jennifer Grossman of the Atlas Society, Michael Ozias, who Patrick and Michael wear a number of hats, Tobias and Nexus, Firewater, they've worked with the Atlas Society, and then Sean Malone, who is the director of media at FEE, and all of them use animation to promote liberty. And I think, Patrick, did we ask you to be moderator? Oh, Sean. Oh, Jake, you're there. Sorry, Jake, come up. It's been a long 3 days, hasn't it? But a wonderful 3 days. I love doing this. And then Jake Klein is going to be the moderator. Thank you.
Hey, guys, thank you so much for coming and turning out to see those films. That last one, Tangled, was just really wonderful. I thought it's a shame the filmmaker for that can't be here with us. For those of you who weren't here from the start when I introduced our film, The Politically Incorrect Guide to the Constitution, I'm Jake Klein. I run the Dangerous Documentaries Project at the Capital Research Center. And definitely you should follow our YouTube channel. If you just search Capital Research Center, we put out 3 animated videos every single month. So we're really heavy in animation. We've got a really talented group of people here who all come at animation from a bunch of different routes. So why don't we just go down, starting with Jennifer, and introduce yourselves, talk about what you do, and how you got involved with animation.
Sure. My name is Jennifer Grossman. I'm CEO of the Atlas Society. It's a 30-year-old philosophy think tank that was founded by David Kelly. I was recruited, almost 4 years ago to take over the organization. And when I came in, they had a video project that they wanted to accomplish. And I said, okay, what was the idea? And it was, pretty kind of standard, like Talking Heads kind of thing. And I said, well, how much do we have in the budget? And it was essentially 10 cents. It was next to nothing. So I thought, well, what can I do with like 10 cents, essentially? And I had seen on YouTube, and the other thing was that I was shifting our target market away from, or not away from, but in addition to people that had been longtime objectivists, open objectivists, to young people who were being seduced by socialism and perhaps has really not heard anything about Ayn Rand. So I saw that young people were watching on YouTube a kind of Draw My Life video that celebrities and comedians were popularizing, and it was pretty, kind of crude, just stick figures drawn by hand on a whiteboard, first-person narrative. I was born here. I was, this happened to me. Just a couple of minutes. I'm like, well, I can do that. Little did I know it was actually not quite that easy to do. So I thought, well, I did sort of a scratch one on my own life. My name is Jennifer Grossman, and then I tried one on Ayn Rand. My name is Ayn Rand, and I did I wrote it, and I learned to speak with a Russian accent in order to narrate it, and I drew it, and so I think it got high marks on the authenticity, sort of, which is what that medium, I think, goes for. Why it's powerful is because it's, we get bombarded by advertisement, we get bombarded by a lot of different, very sophisticated kinds of marketing materials, and to see something, looks like somebody actually made that. So that, Draw My Life by Ayn Rand, for a very teeny little organization at the time, I think we had less than 30,000 Facebook followers, got over 1 million views, got 10,000 engagements, which means people commented, shared, and liked. So I thought, well, we're kind of on to something. And then followed that up with a Draw My Life of Dagny Taggart, Draw My Life of Hank Rearden. Those were professionally done because, I was trying to reach an audience that was interested in this almost naive kind of illustration, but also, I had my board, and I had the audience of objectivists that they didn't want to see a bunch of scribbles. They wanted to see something a little bit more produced. And then our board asked us to start applying these to concepts to see if you could say, my name is envy, and my name is victimhood. And we chose victimhood because there's an epidemic of victimhood, and people are using victimhood in order to gain political power. And so that's the story of the video. I worked with Michael and Patrick. We've become a team. We've produced almost a dozen of these together, and other different kinds of videos. And we have 3 new ones coming up that you'll see over the course of the next few weeks. My name is Gratitude, which is a good antidote to victimhood, resentment, envy. My name is America, her telling her story. And my name is Socialism. So if you go to our Facebook page, you can watch them all there, or go to our Atlas Society website, and you can also see them there. Thank you.
So I'm Sean Malone. I'm the Director of Media for the Foundation for Economic Education, which I assume most of you guys probably are aware of, but we're a now almost 74-year-old organization founded by Leonard Read, and we produce digital media content and in-person seminars for the advancement of what we call the freedom as a life philosophy for young people around the country, around the world. And my history with animation goes way back to maybe 2009, 2010, where I started teaching myself how to do motion graphics work, and that turned into work that I did at the Daily Caller, where I built their first media production team. And we did, Mary Catherine Ham and I did a stop-motion animated piece called Peep Didn't Start the Fire, which was all stop-motion marshmallow peeps doing news, which was pretty funny. And I've done a bunch of animation projects since, culminating in a bi-monthly series for the Foundation for Economic Education called Common Sense Soapbox, starring and basically produced by myself, written and animated by Seamus Coughlin of Freedom Tunes. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that YouTube channel, but it's a very successful comedy shorts channel. We've done about 40 of those now. I think doing the math on that seems about right. And we're about to embark on a 10-part specifically Austrian economics education sort of narrative run that's part of that series, so that's pretty exciting. But and then we've also done a few really beautifully animated pieces that I actually I did not do the artwork for, but I did the animation for myself on Lawrence Reed's book Real Heroes, and that stuff is all really good. So that's kind of my history with animation.
And as long as I'm plugging YouTube channels, Sean runs an amazing YouTube channel for Fee, and everybody should go and pull out your phone and subscribe to that. And I believe you just broke 100,000 followers recently. Is that correct? Yeah,
earlier this year, we're at about 108,000 now, and that's been only within the last year and a half. So I'm really proud of that. That's youtube.com/Fee online.
Yeah, hitting those kinds of numbers is for organizations like ours is really, really impressive and a big deal.
Thanks, man.
Us?
Michael Ozias. I'm the director of the Politically Incorrect Guide series, as well as the Draw My Life series. And my first films were animation. I had a Super 8 camera when I was a little kid, and I would just take my toys and make stop motion. You know, didn't really have access to actors. And from there, it was my intention to be a filmmaker, so I continued to pursue it. Basically, my whole life I've been doing it. And even though I've gotten more and more into documentary and live action, animation has always continued to be part of what I've been doing on some level, and it's been really fun to cultivate that, especially when it's been everything from traditional stop motion and kind of cellular drawn animation to like what we can do digitally now. It's been great. It's been rare that I've really done much in the way of animation that was the same from one thing to the next. It's almost like every single thing is an experiment, and that's part of the fun about it. I kind of like seeing it rendered in different ways and seeing what you can do with it. And then to come here and see these two things back to back with such different styles is like, it was cool to see that like that. So thank you, Joanne, for the forum there. And also my compliments to the filmmakers of Tangled as well. It was a really, really great film. So yeah, that's me.
Partners with Oz and just at Firewater, worked on these projects. I'm a writer, producer, so terrible artist, not so good at the actual animation, but a fantastic singer. So my role in the animation work we do is, in the script writing and the visualization. Collaborating with Oz and Jennifer on the storyboards and the visuals, and just not coming from an animation background, initially. One of the things that I love about animation is the ability to just create a visual language and world that is unique and different, and integrates the story, the characters, the emotions in a sweeping way that no other form really allows for. So it's a wonderful medium, challenging, and I think we have a lot of opportunity to use it for great effect.
I'm going to try and go around with one or two more questions for the panel, but if anyone wants to start lining up behind the microphone, we'll go to Q&A after that. For all of you, animation is a really difficult choice to make when you're developing a project. You know it's potentially going to take really long. It's really rigid. You have to do an extremely detailed pre-production workflow. You can't, like a doc, just start going out and shooting it and figuring it out. And it's potentially really expensive sometimes too. So when you guys are getting off the ground and deciding, we want to communicate some point, some idea that spreads our message via media, how do you decide animation and why do you decide animation? Maybe we'll start with Patrick and go the other way, back down.
Yeah, well, there's animation versus live action versus documentary, some other form, and then what type of animation. And, our philosophy, we've done probably well over 200 animated videos across the past few years, is to allow the style, both visually and tonally, to come from the story. So we don't specialize in a particular form of animation where you would see that this is what we do every single time. In fact, you saw two different things we did, but if we lined up, we could probably line up several and they would all look different. And that's something that is really important to us because we feel that the story itself deserves a form that communicates the message in the world that's created. And there's a lot of pieces for attention to detail, a lot of elements that you put together when you make a piece like that.
Same question, just
Yeah, if you don't want to give an answer, feel free to pass, and I'll go on to the next one.
yeah, I guess as a rule of thumb, I would say if your content would permit it and your budget and everything else would make sense to do whatever it is that you're doing in live action, I think that's probably the way to go. Then you get the human, and you don't want people watching something you've animated and asking themselves, why did they animate this? So I think like if it's at all on the bubble, my instincts are if it ends up going animation, go further. Go all the way into animation land. So you're just doing what animation can do. But usually it's pretty clear from the outset that the content calls or asks for animation. The tricky part is really what the tone of that is, and getting that right, whether you're going for comedy or informing, or what the balance of that is. I think that I think it's just once you get into a certain level of scope, like with the Draw My Life, you can just imagine what that would have cost to shoot that live action with a bunch of different countries and all that stuff. So the whiteboard format is great for that. You can literally be anywhere, do anything, render anything you want. And then like with Politically Incorrect Guide, it's like the content will give you the answer. I'm actually embarrassed to admit how long we were into the process before I looked at it, and I was like, a political cartoon. It's like it seems so clear now, but you really just have to listen to the content and what it's telling you.
I really agree with all of that. First of all, to Patrick's point, like animation can be so different, and you really need to think about that a little bit. Like the Common Sense Soapbox series that we do is very cartoony and very kind of silly, but the Real Heroes stuff that we've done is like very kind of fine art to some extent. They're like sort of digital paintings come to life, and that really comes from the difference between like just doing something for comedy and then doing something to sort of elevate these like big ideas of heroism and like these stories of real historical people and stuff. So the content itself really did inform like the aesthetic of it. But the other thing, and this gets a little bit to Oz's point, like the animation can do stuff that live action absolutely can't do. Like you can be surreal with it. You can do things like Tangled is a really, really good example of that, where like the whole thing is this incredible metaphor, this silent metaphor of strings being attached to this girl who's walking through these bombed out horrible things. To do that in live action would be literally impossible. Like you absolutely couldn't do that in a way that would do it any kind of justice. So like doing that in animation makes a lot of sense. And similarly with the series that we do, we did an episode on college debt, and we literally dropped a giant bag of money on a girl going to college and squished her, right? And I can't really do that in live action either. Like that kind of thing is surreal and kind of ridiculous, but it's what animation is for. And yeah, it's the expense. I mean, it's an expense, but if you get the right connection of things, it's actually cheaper, I think, to do it that way than if you tried to do it live action. So I agree.
Yes, for us, certainly the first couple were a lot less expensive, and that choice was driven by cost. But I think also the choice was driven by who we are as an organization at the Atlas Society, and we're building creatively upon the ideas of Ayn Rand, who many of us may think of as a philosopher, but I tend to think of as first and foremost an artist. And she talked about art as recreating reality according to one's values. And so at the Atlas Society, we've really emphasized visually creative, more artistically oriented projects from doing, an art contest right out of the box with our artist in residence, to our graphic novel of Anthem, which we then also animated into an 18-part series. So I think that art has a way of being able to reach people on a spiritual level that is essential to trying to persuade people of our point of view. Because we tend to look at the facts, and it hasn't worked, and the math doesn't add up. But engaging the imagination and engaging the emotions is something I think that you can do uniquely with art and in this format, animation.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who aren't like super deep into Ayn Rand don't know that she had like a whole philosophy of art, and that she wasn't just, writing about politics and greed all the time, although obviously that's certainly core. Anybody who's interested in that should go and read her book, The Romantic Manifesto, which is, you would know better than I would, but probably one of her least read books, and is, just absolutely incredibly insightful on like what art is and how art works and all that other stuff. So it looks like we have a question from the audience. You want to go ahead?
Perhaps invested a lot of my childhood in watching Hanna-Barbera and Warner Brothers cartoons. I want to thank you for using animation. Question about the politically incorrect guide to the Constitution. Did you say that that's the first of 10 parts? If so, does that mean we're going to be seeing about 30 topics total? And can you give us some preview about what some of the other topics might be?
Yeah, it does. So we're still working on the rest of the episode, so we can't say what exactly the topics are yet. But you're right, each episode is going to have a broad overarching topic, like this first one was the Constitution, right? And it's based on a book series, so there's lots of things in the book series. There's Politically Incorrect Guide to Communism, Politically Incorrect Guide to Climate Change, to feminism, to the 60s, etc. So there's a lot there. We're not going to be sticking to that exactly. And then, yes, within each episode, we'll have 3 smaller segments, topics within the broader topic. So that's exactly right.
So wait, so that's the whole... There was one thing on the Constitution. You're not going to do...
No, yeah. So it's one episode on the... So not every episode is going to be on the Constitution. Sorry if that wasn't clear. We should probably clarify that if that's not clear.
No, because I would think then if you only are doing one episode on the Constitution, it seems like you've left a lot on the table, right? There are a lot of other things in the Constitution that you could... the Second Amendment and so forth that you could talk about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we could... Michael and Tom on their podcasts and in their other platforms, talk about that endlessly. That's just the nature of doing a 12 to 15-minute, animated show. You can't talk about everything in those time constraints. But yeah, again, go to dangerousdocumentaries.com and you can sign up for our email list, and we'll update you on that when that's coming out. We expect it will be out by early 2020, and so we're really excited about that.
Jake, one of the things that I've learned from doing this kind of stuff and like doing this kind of content on a basically weekly basis is that the good and the bad news is that there's literally no end to what you can cover.
Yeah.
Like, there are so many terrible ideas out there to actually go deal with. Endless, absolutely endless.
Yeah, absolutely. Delving into that a little bit more, so obviously we're not just animating to animate, we're a little bit unique in that we're animating with an agenda, right? We're really trying to teach people certain ideas and spread the ideas of liberty. So maybe going from Jennifer down, if you guys want to answer, how have you seen animation be able to help you reach people in new ways and convince people of ideas and just spread the message of liberty in ways that, the other mediums that you guys work on, be it artistic or be it writing or being whatever, simply just can't get across to people?
Well, I have a business background, so, we look at the market in a segmented way with different kinds of consumers who have different kinds of needs that they're looking for, and therefore we do different kinds of products. I think with the Draw My Life videos, one of the things that is helpful in terms of engaging the attention is that it's a person, it's a person telling their story. So they start with their name. People they care about people, they want to be able to connect with a person telling their narrative. So that's one of the reasons that we've chosen to go with this in order to talk about some really, I wouldn't say complicated, but they're big ideas. How do you talk about greed and talk about it in a different way? And you could do that by saying, well, writing about it, and this is the history, and these are the motives, and this is what happened at the end of the story. But putting it in a story allows you to make the different kinds of connections, I think, more compellingly.
Earlier I talked about the ability to use animation to be surrealist or, do something that's really outside of physical reality. But one of the other really great things about animation, I think specifically, is that you can make something that is sort of archetypal in a way, so that your audience doesn't necessarily have to identify with the specifics of the situation, but because it's broad and because it's something that can be done in a way that's really metaphorical. I think Tangled, again, is a really good example of this, is that it's very metaphorical, but it's also not so concrete. So you can really put yourself into it. So as an audience member, you can get a level of empathy that I think sometimes you can't even in live action. And that's a thing that I think animation's great at. And it's something certainly I've seen with the work that we've done.
I think one of the ways it helps is just in terms of the vast amount of variety that it offers because of all the different ways you can do it and all of the different feelings that it can have. So, for example, we all have our own feelings about different types of animation and what that says to us. And so we couldn't all get together in isolation and create the perfect delivery mechanism, vehicle, and the perfect animation choice, because the success is ultimately going to be co-created with the viewer who's watching it and what they're bringing and their feelings about these things. It's just like to have somebody come up to the microphone and say, I grew up on Hanna-Barbera cartoons. Thank you for putting Scooby-Doo in there. It's I appreciate you, man. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's so I feel that way too. It's that's the kind of opportunity that is offered. We can connect in that way. That's a lot of fun. So thanks for saying that.
So maybe just to put a button, we have two ways that animation can create wisdom or grow your moral imagination. One being, when it is like Entangled, and you have this character who's not exactly human. In some ways, the stripped downness of the spirit is easier for you to personally identify with and put yourself in those shoes. And it sort of also strips away the complexity of the issues and, just leaves us with this raw emotional sense that is a specific part of you that is connecting to the character and the journey. Then, for what Sean was saying, from the standpoint of metaphor as a means of affecting humans' understanding, when we made the politically incorrect guide, the whole design of the show is we're going to really try to merge reason and metaphor. So we have Tom and Michael, and they are two boisterous guys who have been friends for a long time and have great energy with one another and argue. And they're also each very compelling and can explain issues and give you the history and lay out reasoning. But that's just not enough to be compelling, particularly to new audiences. And so one of the key aspects of the show, which Jake, Oz, and I really drove those guys to do, which is outside of their wheelhouse, but we appreciate them being willing to grow with us on that, is to, give us that more metaphoric example, like The Favor, where you have something like the General Welfare Clause. Most people don't even know what it is. And so the ability to connect The Favor to the General Welfare Clause is a key intellectual tool to help them get a new understanding of the Constitution that they never could have had before, and no means of explaining it using reason would have ever achieved.
I'll just add one point to your question about animation and why it's a good vehicle for also trying to communicate and educate a ideological agenda, really, which is pretty, controversial, particularly in the entertainment field. When Patrick, Oz, and I, we worked on a couple of actual live-action comedic videos. They were on socially transmitted disease of envy, and they involved a cast of characters and a doctor and patients and all of that. And I think one of the challenges we had, and you guys can let me know if you see it differently, was once the actors, a lot of times that they would look at what the message it was that we were talking about, and that we were at the end of the day going to be giving them a big prophylactic, which was reading Atlas Shrugged. I mean, some of them were really, their heart really wasn't into it, because it just went against their values. And so having animation just gives us a little bit more control over the actors.
That's actually not, I mean, that's absolutely true, and that's actually one of the reasons why I started getting into doing motion graphics and stuff like that to begin with, because when I was doing that, I was living in Hollywood, I was living in Los Angeles, working in the entertainment industry, and it was actually really hard to find. Like, the idea, if I wrote a sketch and then shopped it to my friends in LA, like, that would have just tanked hard, right? So I could do stuff that was like motion graphics driven and things like that, where I just narrate it myself and be like, this is what I care about. Nobody else cares, but here I am. So, yeah.
I do exactly that same thing with our YouTube channel. So, okay, so I think we're about out of time. I just want to make sure we hit any other audience questions that you guys have the opportunity. Is there anybody else that wants to ask a question? It's okay if not. All right, so I think that's it. I really encourage everybody to stick around. Thank you. Yeah, we've got, in 10 minutes, there's going to be another really great film. I know it's really great because I also produced it. It's called The Architects of Woke, Judith Butler's War on Science, and we're going to have a panel about feminism and genderism afterwards, which I'm sure will be controversial and contentious and fun. Yeah. Yeah. So I'll be back up in 10 minutes to introduce that. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.